Jeez.
I can't even process what I just experienced.
Holy sh!
What's going on, everybody? It's Greg Peters with the Car Passion channel, and you already know we're back at Advanced Engine Dynamics. We're shooting for 500 today. That being said, I know from the data logs that the turbo on this car is at its absolute limit, right around 500 horsepower. In fact, it really wouldn't be a surprise to me if the car wasn't able to make 500 horsepower today, but as I said, I would try, so I'm here now. Speaking about limits, your guys' tuners that you're bringing your Miatas to, they're ratting you out, okay? They're coming to me and they're saying, hey, I keep getting customers bringing their cars in with 6258 saying, well, because Greg Peters made 400 horsepower, I want my car to make 400 horsepower too. It's not fully realistic for a couple reasons. So number one, dynos can read differently. So if I put this car on a dyno that reads, say, 10% less, all of a sudden, this 500 horsepower Miata is now a 450 horsepower Miata. Is the car any slower? Of course not. Another thing is the fuel type you're using. I know all the Euro boys over in UK, Germany, they think their 98 RON is like the ultimate horsepower liquid, but in reality, compared to E85, it is nothing. Your guys' 98 over in Europe is similar to what we have, we call 93 here, and E85 is like 100, 102 octane equivalent as far as knock resistance. So that's another big thing that helps the car make a lot more power. The third and probably biggest reason any self-respecting and sane tuner is not gonna take a customer car, a customer engine, and just crank it up to the very ragged edge to where it absolutely won't make any more power, because blowing up engines equals bad Yelp reviews. So they're gonna give you a tune where your turbo's running efficiency, the engine's happy, you can take it to the track, you can beat on it, and this, it never sees long stints of boost or 20-minute lapping sessions. You know, I take it to the track once in a while, but it's really just a street car. Me cruising this thing on the freeway, it takes about 3 seconds to get to a speed that can get me arrested and get my car taken away, basically. So it's only in boost for a few seconds at a time, and that's really all I have to worry about when I have a setup that's totally maxed out, and it's my money and my work that's gone into this, and I'm also the one who's tuning it. So I'm taking all the risk. It's on me if I blow it up. It's not, you know, a tuner with a customer who's gonna be dissatisfied when he makes 390 horsepower and the customer's going,
well, Greg Peters made 400.
And then he cranks it up, he's like, okay, whatever, cranks it up and then blows the motor. But anyways, I think you guys get the point. Today we're trying to shoot for 500 horsepower. There's a couple changes that have been made to the car since the last dyno day, which I'll link that video down below in the description if you guys want to check it out. The biggest thing is we ran the fuel system to its limit and beyond. So now I upgraded the fuel injectors from Injector Dynamics 1000cc to Injector Dynamics 1300 cc's. The fuel pump has been upgraded from a 340 liter per hour to a 450 liter per hour, as well as getting a dedicated relay and a hardwire kit. Now, if you guys want to learn how to do any of that stuff, I'll link that video down below in the description as well. I made a little tweak to the boost control. So it's running a 4-port electronic boost control solenoid with a dual port actuator, which in easy to understand terms, I'm able to now use boost pressure to force the wastegate to stay shut. Hopefully I'll be able to get that extra half a pound of boost that I need to crack that 500, which for those of you who didn't see, the car made 497.6. So we're right there, and hopefully we'll be able to crack it today. Now, the biggest, those are like supporting mods, you know, the fuel system to keep the car safe. It's not really gonna make any extra power, but there is one power upgrade, which can be seen right here. I upgraded from the Fab 9 Stage 1 intercooler, and this is the Fab 9 Stage 2 intercooler. So the previous intercooler was rated for 350 horsepower. This core is rated for 550 horsepower. So hopefully that's gonna lead to a little bit cooler intake temps, but also a less restrictive intercooler, allowing that air to get into the motor a little bit easier and give me the 3-wheel horsepower that I need. Okay, let's do some pulls. The car right now is on a 12-pound wastegate spring. The boost control is off. I'm gonna start the boost a little bit low, see what it makes, and then we'll gradually crank it up and see what it does today. It's nice, cool weather out here. We're at a really low altitude here in Southern California, so should make for some good power. Let's do it.
So there's the first pull of the day, 311 horsepower on wastegate spring, which turned out to be about 11.5 psi. But I know nobody clicked on this video to watch me make 300 horsepower, so I'll continue getting things ramped up while I get the new fuel and boost control setup dialed in.
All right, things are moving pretty quickly here. You can see the car already did a 448 wheel horsepower pull. And as you can kind of see based on the pulls that I've done so far, what I'm doing is just starting with the base spring pressure, which was about 13 PSI. Our last run here, 448 wheel horsepower, that was roughly 23 pounds of boost. Intake temps look great, so I think the intercooler is really gonna help, but I'll get into that a little bit later. The boost control is going great. When I rolled off the dyno last time, I was running 100% boost duty cycle, which means I can't turn it up anymore. It's just the spring trying to hold the gate closed. There's no boost pressure opening the gate, and I was only able to get to about 27.5 PSI at the high RPM. Right now, with the 4-port solenoid, the boost duty cycle is below 50%, and it's got a much lighter spring in it, 12 pounds compared to 21 before. But yeah, I know that's a lot of numbers, but I know I got a lot of dyno nerds watching my videos, so I want to throw as much information as I can in there, and we're gonna let the car cool off a little bit and do some more pulls. It's a good day, and I'm towing, so it's stress-free. I could blow this thing to the moon. All right, it'd still be a little bit like unhappy about that, but anyways, it's a good day on the dyno. We made 488, 494, 494, and another 494, almost 495. On this run, so here's the thing. I am actually getting the turbo to make more pressure, but because of the mapping, the engine's going into a different part of the map. It's running richer and having less ignition timing. So what I just did is I'm gonna leave the boost the same. It's at about 29.5 pounds, and do a little bit more ignition advance and lean it out just a bit because it was running like 10s, very rich. And I mean, we're just looking for like 6 more horsepower from right now. So I knew it was a possibility we'd get stuck just below 500, but that doesn't mean I'm not gonna try. So let's give her another run. This is it, dude. This is the 500 horsepower pull, I'm telling you right now. Let me see it. Dude. I'm shaking. I'm shaking right now. Oh my God. That's it, dude. We're done. Oh my God. Actually, I gotta stop that dude. quick. Hey, let me see the camera real quick.
I'm just
this from you real quick. Actually, I want to get a shot of this on a pull, but it looks hilarious because the boost gauge only goes to 30, and it's just sitting at the max for the whole pull. Like, please don't question why I'm stressed here. Okay, this is my blood, sweat, and tears. Here, you can have this back. I'm gonna drop it. I'm shaking. Dude, I was afraid I wasn't gonna do it. Let this just be the ultimate message to everyone out there watching. You can build an engine in your garage, basic hand tools, very limited experience, 503 wheel. This is gonna be wild, dude. We're doing ride-alongs today. Mitchel's my cameraman. Of course, don't forget to check out his YouTube channel, link down below, NC Builds. But I told him that I was gonna have to give him a rain check for a ride-along because last time when I had the car here, and we just did a ton of pulls on it trying to make 500, I had to drive it home, which was nerve-wracking on its own. But now I'm trailering, so it doesn't even matter. I'm gonna do a cool test with this intercooler. Toby has a thermal imaging camera, and we're gonna get a shot of each intercooler during a pull and see how they look different. I know I said like you shouldn't be obsessed with numbers in my little PSA that I talked about earlier, but here's my problem. When people ask how much power the car has, as soon as you start saying 4, they just tune you out, they just stop listening. They're like, oh, it's a 400 horsepower Miata. It had to start with a 5, and now it does. 503. I don't know what the boost was.
Oh, we'll call that 504.
Yeah, that's 504.
We'll round that up.
This is the previous BP engine record holder for this dyno. Now I know obviously I'm not like the world record holder, I wasn't going for that, but it is pretty cool to say that this little old red is now officially the most powerful Miata engine powered Miata to roll out of Advanced Engine Dynamics by 2 horsepower, 1.99, but who's counting? Look at that.
Now that 503 run was after several dyno pulls in a row, so I just had to let the car cool down and see if it would make any more power.
That's a shitload of torque too. Worth it. Yeah.
Now, once we made 512, Toby, being the simultaneously good and bad influence that he is, looked at the car and said, I think this thing's got 520 in it.
What else is Toby going to try to convince me to turn up?
You fight me if you're stepping away.
It's true. That's years of work in that engine bay. Every pull could be the last. Never know.
Calls, part swapping,
Uh-huh.
a lot of what do you think about? Thank you, Greg.
Thank you,
That was a
Toby.
good day. Appreciate this.
So, here we are, my people. We have arrived at 523 wheel horsepower. Still can't believe it myself. 465 pound-feet of torque. Nice, beautiful, flat torque curve. And I just don't have words, you know? Toby, man, just keeps on pushing 1 degree, 1 pound of boost at a time. He told me it was safe, and look, it's safe. Crazy, crazy, crazy power. So we're gonna do a couple little tests here with the old intercooler, but my heart's had enough for one day pushing it like this. But man, super pumped. So yeah, lunchtime.
So before we go any further, I want to take a look at this dyno chart. Now, this did end up being the maximum power pull for the day, just under 33 pounds of boost, and the engine made 465 pound-feet of torque and 523 horsepower at the wheels. Them's V8 numbers, boys, and I'm not talking about junkyard suburban motor. That's like bolt-on LS7 power. But the main thing I want to talk about here, as always, is the torque curve. So let's take a look at this 350 foot-pound line, and you can see the engine is making above 350 foot-pounds of torque from 4,100 RPM all the way out to about 7,300. And that's what I call just a good street car. Now, over the past couple months, I've been getting more and more comments, people saying I only care about straight line power and peak horsepower now, but if that was true, it would be real easy for me to just throw a gigantic turbocharger on this car, and it would make loads of peak power, and the power band would be about 1,500 RPM. And I've seen plenty of Miatas that make well above 400 horsepower, and the power band looks just like that. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that's a bad thing, it just doesn't work for what I like to use my car for, and I'm constantly trying to push that boundary of what makes an overall fun driving car that you can use for all sorts of different driving, but still make great peak power. Now, you can still have a wide power band and make a lot of peak power if you go to a real big turbocharger and big cams, but the downside to that is you have to spin the engine a lot faster, which doesn't matter if you have the best parts in your engine. High RPM wears engines out faster, and that's another reason why I want to keep all this power within pretty much stock RPM range, just to try to get a little bit of longevity out of this engine. I know I push it really hard, but I also want to see how long this home-built motor is going to last, and it's got over 14,000 very hard miles on it now, so I'm impressed with it so far. So that's my reasoning for sticking with stock cams and trying to pack as much power as possible below that 7,500 RPM range.
Wait, hold on, Craig, rewind that last clip. Yeah, that's the one. Satisfying, isn't it? So satisfying, in fact, that I just had to drop some merch about it. So this design is inspired by all the people out there who have built up their Miatas and absolutely clapped one of their friends' V8 cars. And as with all my shirts, these babies are as soft as stock connecting rods. I have a small quantity on hand ready to ship right now, but pre-orders will be available for about 2 weeks. Full details are on my site if you want to pick one up, thecarpassionchannel.com/store. Thank you guys for the support. Hope you're having a great holiday season. And now, back to the video.
All right, let's do some intercooler testing, shall we? And shout out to Toby here. I have never seen a man trust tie-down straps this much, but he got the shots we needed. So let's get a round of applause. I just want to play the clips first, and then I'll give you guys a little breakdown and pull information from the data logs to kind of explain what happened with each intercooler. So there's the footage from the first pull, and it looks totally awesome, but it's also pretty much what everyone would expect. Hot air come in, cold air come out, turbo cargo burr. It doesn't really do any good until we have a comparison on the smaller intercooler, so I went ahead and got that thing changed out.
Jeez.
You can see this difference in the size of the cores. Bolt this thing on and we'll do basically a back-to-back pull.
The piping didn't exactly fit right, so I kind of had to ghetto rig it and hang it down all low, but anyways, here's what that pull looks like.
Scare the shit out of me.
Okay, look, I knew I was playing with fire when I cut that intercooler pipe and didn't put a bead roll on it, but to be fair, it did last most of the day. It just had to blow off at the worst possible time. But anyways, Toby made sure he was safe for the remainder of the pulls. Okay, Okay, so that's what the pulls for both intercoolers look like, and the thermal imaging is really just for a visual representation. I realize it's not a perfect demonstration of what's going on, but what we can gather here is the air entering the inlet tanks is very hot. The top of this scale is white. Anything that's white is 140 degrees Fahrenheit or hotter, and I guarantee you the air coming into these intercoolers is way hotter than 140. As the air goes through the intercoolers, it cools off, and then by the time it gets to the engine, it is much cooler. Now with the big intercooler, you can see that the temperature is getting down to the very bottom of the scale, which is 82 degrees Fahrenheit. And for some reason on the clip of the smaller intercooler, there was a lot of noise. You can see there's a lot of purple coloration around, so can't get a perfect idea of what's going on here. You can see that the bright orange is definitely making it a lot farther across the intercooler, but the real useful and interesting information comes from the data logs and the dyno charts. First, let's take a look at the peak temperatures. This is the air leaving the intercooler and entering the engine. Both of the pulls started around 80 degrees Fahrenheit, and by the end of the pull, the small intercooler was seeing temperatures of 163 degrees, while the big intercooler was only outputting 97 degrees. So a peak temperature difference of 66 degrees Fahrenheit, and keep in mind, to get from 4,000 RPM to redline, it only takes 3 seconds. And here's what that looks like on a chart. Down below, you can see the boost levels were nearly identical on both pulls, and up above, the green line is the intake temperature for the small intercooler, and the red line is the intake temperature for the big intercooler. It is nearly flat. The air temps coming out of the small intercooler are skyrocketing, and you could imagine how much worse that might get on a pull where you're going through 2 or 3 gears at a time. Now, I do also have a second map sensor in the car to measure the pressure before and after the intercooler, and that sensor was unfortunately not working for most of the day. Now, I was able to catch one pull with the big intercooler where the sensor was working. I'm seeing 1 psi of pressure drop across this intercooler, which is great. It indicates that it's not too small or too restrictive. If you have a high pressure drop, the turbo has to work harder to get the desired boost level into the engine. So let's say you're seeing a 4 psi pressure drop and your engine's running 25 psi, the turbo is actually needing to crank out 29 psi to get 25 into the engine, and that's generating extra heat for the intercooler to manage. So it's very important that you choose the right intercooler for your setup. Now, as much as I thought that the small intercooler would be a restriction, it turns out that was not exactly the case. So look at these two dyno plots, back-to-back pulls, same exact tune. So the run with the small intercooler is in orange. The run with the smaller intercooler actually was about 1 psi more, and it made 6 less horsepower, or about 1%. Turns out the only problem with it is the air temperature management. So say if you had a bigger engine making 500 horsepower on way less boost, and a turbo that's creating cooler air temperatures, this intercooler might be just fine. But the air temperature of this Borg Warner, which is completely maxed out and making 30 psi, is probably upwards of 300 degrees Fahrenheit, and it needs that massive intercooler to control that temperature.
523 wheel horsepower, 465 pound-feet of torque at the wheels. That's an increase of over 100 horsepower and over 100 foot-pounds of torque from the previous smaller EFR turbo. Absolutely wild. Definitely did not think it was going to be able to make that much power, let alone even break 500. Not sure if I'll leave it at this rowdy level. It just kind of depends on the street manners and if I have any kind of temperature issues. Like I talked about in the beginning of the video, this setup is pretty much at its absolute limit, and I do care a little bit about longevity, but I don't know, I'll discuss that in future videos. I definitely want to take this thing for a rip. This will be my first time driving it above 440 wheel horsepower, and now it's 523, so it does not have boost by gear setup or anything like that yet, so gotta be kind of careful, but let's freaking take it for a rip.
It's about to be scary. Yeah. You're under tray.
Okay, that's crazy, dude.
We both looked at each other and went, holy sh**. It sounded nuts.
Okay, I just need to zip tie that to the tow hook. It feels like some sort of aircraft getting ready to just take off the runway.
What are your emotions right now, Greg?
I can't even process what I just experienced. Like, I was just nervous the entire car was gonna fly apart the entire time, but it didn't. And it actually hooked up a little bit.
There's no real exhaust note. You just hear straight engine and turbo.
Sounds rowdy out of back.
That's by far the fastest vehicle that's the fastest acceleration I've ever experienced. Like, it's almost scary that I'm controlling it. I hope it looks as fast in the video. It's half of what it feels like. I can't even words right now, dude. Where's my English?
Okay, yeah. What the f was that? No, seriously, what the f was that? Holy That was nutty.
Is that not?
That was nutty.
Alright, here we go.
Mother of God, holy this thing is fast. Holy So, final thoughts?
Speechless. I don't have anything to say. I'm like processing everything that just happened.
Yeah.
That is wild.
So definitely from 420 to this, a 100% difference of just everything.
The turbo that's on it now has so much more power up top. Where you're like, okay, man, like the turbo punches really hard, it spools quick, and you're like, oh, it's gonna keep going.
Yeah.
And that is it for today's video. I hope you guys did enjoy it. It's always a really fun time at Advanced Engine Dynamics. If you guys ever need any tuning services and you're in SoCal, AED is the place to go. And as far as the red car, I cannot believe how far it's come since I first bought it in 2013. It's been an epic project with many phases, iterations, and headaches along the way. So whether you've been watching since my early videos or this is the first one you've ever seen, I appreciate you all, and I will leave you with this very special dyno plot that shows the complete history of the red car from being bone stock until today. I'm talking about from the bone stock 1.6 liter to the homebrew turbo, homebrew tune setup to my very first tune from Advanced Engine Dynamics, and I was still hungry for more, so I went with that Garrett Turbo E85 setup, and I got a little too greedy, so I blew the motor and had to build myself a 1.8 liter, which made excellent power, but of course, here we are today with even more on the same motor, but with an even badder turbo setup. So I hope people out there have found plenty of motivation watching this project come together, and it's December, which means build season is among us, so get the heck off YouTube, get out in the garage, and go build yourself a turbo Miata of your own.